The emergency bridge of the Terran Resolve was a symphony of controlled chaos. Alarms blared in muted tones, their urgency dampened by the ship's advanced sound-dampening systems. Captain Elena Rodriguez gripped the command chair, her dark eyes reflecting the holographic displays showing Earth's final moments. 36 hours earlier, the Centauri Collective had launched their final assault. What began as a seemingly routine first contact had devolved into total war with terrifying speed. Their biomechanical warships, shaped like obsidian blades against the starscape, had systematically dismantled humanity's orbital defenses. Entire continents burned below, reduced to smoldering wasteland by weapons that liquefied matter at the molecular level. "Status report," Elena commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of humanity's survival resting on her shoulders. Lieutenant Kira Chen, her mixed-race features illuminated by the tactical display, responded with practiced precision. "Primary quantum drives at 62% capacity. We've lost contact with all ground control stations. Last transmission from Mars Colony was 3 hours ago. They were under heavy assault." The bridge crew was a mosaic of humanity's last survivors. Some were military, others were scientists, engineers, and specialists chosen for their unique skills. They wore a mismatched array of uniforms and protective gear, a testament to their desperate circumstances. Chief Engineer Marcus Chen, no relation to Kira, worked frantically at a secondary console. His hands moved with a surgeon's precision, rerouting power conduits and stabilizing systems that were never meant to work together. The Terran Resolve was more a patchwork of technologies than a traditional battleship, a living testament to human ingenuity. "The quantum drive is our only advantage," Marcus muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "If we can keep it stable." Elena knew the ship's history. Designed as an experimental prototype, the Terran Resolve was humanity's most ambitious military project. Combining theoretical quantum mechanics with adaptive combat systems, it represented generations of scientific breakthrough. Most military experts had called it impossible. Now, it was humanity's last hope. A sudden explosion rocked the ship. The holographic displays flickered, showing a massive Centauri dreadnought emerging from subspace near their position. Its biomechanical hull pulsed with an almost living energy, thousands of weapon ports opening like the maws of prehistoric predators. "Evasive pattern Delta 9, Elena ordered. Her fingers danced across the command interface, activating systems that blended cutting-edge human technology with salvaged alien components. The ship responded like a living entity. Quantum displacement drives hummed, creating multiple probabilistic positions simultaneously. To the Centauri targeting systems, the Terran Resolve became a ghost, existing everywhere and nowhere. Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through the tension. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission. It's from the United Earth Council." Elena's breath caught. The council had been decimated hours ago. Only one transmission protocol remained for such circumstances. "Play it," she commanded. A holographic figure materialized. Dr. Alejandro Reyes, Chief Scientific Advisor to the Global Defense Initiative. His image was fragmented, bloody, clearly transmitted from a dying location. "Captain Rodriguez," he began, "you carry more than a ship. You carry the genetic archives, the technological records, the very DNA of human civilization. The Terran Resolve is not just a weapon. It is humanity's memory, humanity's future." The transmission cut out, leaving behind a profound silence. Elena looked around the bridge. Humanity's last hope wasn't measured in weapons or technology. It was measured in the determination of these survivors, in their will to endure. "Prepare for quantum slip," she said. "We're getting out of here." The maintenance bay of the Terran Resolve looked like a madman's workshop. Twisted fragments of alien technology lay scattered alongside human equipment, creating a landscape of impossible potential. Chief Engineer Marcus Chen moved between workstations like a conductor orchestrating a complex symphony of repair and innovation. "We're not just fixing this ship," Marcus muttered to himself. "We're reimagining what's possible." Scattered around him, The engineering team worked with a mixture of desperation and excitement. Dr. Aisha Okoye, a quantum systems specialist, carefully manipulated a piece of Centauri biomechanical interface. Her augmented hands moved with microscopic precision, translating alien technology into something humans could understand and use. "Marcus," she called out, "you need to see this." The fragment she was working on pulsed with an almost organic light. Traditional human understanding of technology suggested it should be impossible, a piece of alien tech that seemed to respond to human touch, to anticipate and adapt. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched from the observation deck. Her strategic mind was already calculating the potential of these technological breakthroughs. Each piece of salvaged alien technology was more than a weapon or a tool. It was a key to survival. "We're creating something entirely new," Dr. Okoye explained, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and profound understanding. "This isn't just about copying alien technology. We're creating a symbiotic system that bridges human creativity with alien engineering." The ship's quantum drive, once a theoretical concept, now hummed with potential. Marcus had discovered that by integrating fragments of Centauri propulsion systems, they could create multiple probabilistic jump points. It wasn't just faster than light travel, it was travel that existed in multiple potential states simultaneously. Lieutenant Kira Chen worked on the ship's defensive systems. What had started as a conventional energy shield was now a dynamic barrier that could predict and adapt to incoming weapon signatures. Each potential attack route was analyzed, calculated, and neutralized before it could even fully form. "It's like the ship is thinking," Kira remarked to Marcus, "predicting threats before they even exist." The transformation wasn't just technological. The crew itself was changing. Extended exposure to the modified systems created subtle neural links. They were beginning to understand the ship not as a machine, but as an extension of themselves. A sudden alert interrupted their work. The ship's sensors had detected a Centauri tracking signature. They had been found. "Quantum displacement," Elena commanded. "Maximum probabilistic spread." The ship seemed to dissolve, existing in multiple potential locations simultaneously. To any external observer, it would appear to simply vanish. But this was more than an evasion technique. It was a fundamental reimagining of spatial existence. Marcus watched the system readouts with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. "We're not just hiding," he explained to a junior engineer. "We're existing in a state of quantum uncertainty. We are everywhere and nowhere." The alien tracking system would be completely confused. Traditional targeting would be impossible. They had turned their greatest vulnerability, being the last ship of humanity, into their ultimate weapon of survival. As the systems stabilized, Elena looked at her crew. They were no longer just survivors. They were pioneers of a new form of existence, pushing the boundaries of what technology and human potential could achieve. "We're going to make them remember us," she said quietly. "Not as victims, but as something they could never understand." The Terran Resolve continued its quantum dance, a beacon of human innovation against the vast, dark canvas of space. The nebula's electromagnetic interference provided perfect cover. Captain Elena Rodriguez studied the holographic display, her fingers tracing potential attack vectors with the precision of a surgeon. "Target is the Centauri subspace relay station in the Omega Quadrant," she announced. The bridge crew tensed, understanding the magnitude of their mission. The Terran Resolve had become a legend among the survivors, a ghost ship that struck without warning and vanished before the enemy could comprehend what had happened. Their quantum displacement technology transformed traditional warfare into something the Centauri couldn't predict or defend against. Lieutenant Kira Chen's fingers danced across the tactical interface. Quantum signatures masked will appear as background radiation to their sensors. Her voice carried a hint of pride. They had turned invisibility into an art form. Chief Engineer Marcus Chen worked at a secondary console, continuously modifying their adaptive camouflage. What had started as a defensive system was now a weapon of psychological warfare. The Centauri would see them, then not see them, then question the very nature of their perception. "Approaching target in 3 minutes," announced Navigation Officer Diego Ramirez. His hands moved with a musician's grace, plotting impossible trajectories that defied conventional spaceflight. The mission was more than a simple attack. It was a carefully orchestrated psychological operation designed to destabilize the Centauri command structure. Intelligence gathered from their previous encounters suggested the alien civilization operated on a highly centralized, almost hive-like communication network. "Target's defensive grid is impressive," Dr. Aisha Okoye commented, analyzing the incoming sensor data. "But impressive doesn't mean impenetrable." Alina's strategy was elegant in its simplicity. They would not destroy the relay station. They would infiltrate it, leave subtle signs of their presence, and manipulate the data in ways that would create maximum confusion. "Quantum intrusion sequence ready," Marcus reported. The ship's systems were no longer just technological. They were an extension of human creativity, capable of thinking beyond linear logic. The attack, when it came, was almost beautiful in its precision. The Terran resolve seemed to phase through the station's defenses, leaving no traditional signature of entry or exit. Data streams were subtly altered, communication pathways mysteriously rerouted. To the Centauri monitoring systems, it would appear as a momentary glitch. But each glitch was a carefully placed seed of doubt, a psychological weapon more powerful than any physical assault. "Infiltration complete," Kira announced. "We've introduced recursive logic loops in their primary communication algorithms. Their command structure will spend weeks trying to understand what happened." But the mission wasn't just about tactical advantage. Alina understood they were fighting for more than survival. They were fighting to prove humanity's worth, to show that creativity and adaptability were weapons more powerful than any technological superiority. A transmission crackled through their secondary communication array. It was weak, almost lost in the electromagnetic noise of the nebula. But it was unmistakably human. "Survivors, Mars colony, need assistance." The bridge went silent. Alina's eyes met Marcus. They both understood what this meant. They were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to rescue what remained of their species. "Plot an intercept course," Alina commanded, "and prepare for quantum slip. We're going to save whatever and whoever we can." The Terran resolve disappeared into the cosmic shadows, a beacon of hope in a universe that had tried to extinguish humanity. The crew quarters of the Terran resolve were no longer just sleeping spaces. They had become a living, breathing ecosystem of human potential. What had once been rigid military divisions had dissolved into something far more organic and complex. Dr. Aisha Okoye sat in the communal area, teaching quantum mechanics to a group that included engineers, former maintenance workers, and even 2 children rescued from the Mars colony. Her lessons were more than academic. They were survival training for a species reimagining itself. "Uncertainty isn't weakness," she explained, her hands tracing holographic diagrams in the air. "It's possibility. We exist in multiple potential states, just like the quantum systems we're learning to master." The children, Zara and Michael, survivors of the initial Centauri assault, listened with an intensity that belied their young age. They had seen their world destroyed, yet here they were, learning, adapting, becoming something new. Captain Alina Rodriguez observed from the doorway. The transformation of her crew was more than just a survival mechanism. It was a fundamental reimagining of human social structure. Earlier that day, she had witnessed Marcus Chen, the chief engineer, consulting with Kira about a complex medical problem affecting one of the rescued colonists. Engineering, medicine, strategy, the boundaries had blurred. Each crew member was now a multidisciplinary survivor, their skills flowing into one another like water. In the medical bay, Dr. Ramon Santos worked alongside rescued Centauri bioengineers they had liberated during a previous mission. The unlikely team was developing adaptive medical technologies that combined human creativity with alien biological understanding. "We're not just treating injuries, Raymond explained to Elena during her routine check-in. We're learning how different biological systems can communicate, can heal, can evolve. The ship itself seemed to be adapting. Neural interface systems originally designed for ship control had begun to create subtle connections between crew members. They could sense each other's emotional states, share information almost instantaneously, create a collective intelligence that was more than the sum of its parts. Kira Chen discovered this unexpectedly during a critical system maintenance. A potential power failure in the quantum drive was detected simultaneously by 3 different crew members in entirely different sections of the ship. Before traditional communication could even begin, they had already begun coordinating a solution. It's like we're becoming something new, Kira remarked to Elena. Not just humans, not just a crew, something else entirely. The rescued colonists integrated seamlessly. A former accountant now helped with complex navigational calculations. A retired teacher managed resource allocation with a strategic mind that rivaled military planners. Age, previous profession, social status. These were relics of a world that no longer existed. During their evening collective meeting, Elena looked around the room. Humans, 2 rescued Centauri scientists, children, elderly survivors, all united by a single purpose. Their diversity was their strength, their adaptability their weapon. We are not just surviving, she told them. We are becoming the architects of a new form of civilization. Every challenge is an opportunity. Every limitation is a potential breakthrough. Outside the ship's protective quantum field, the universe remained vast and dangerous. The Centauri threat still loomed. But inside the Terran Resolve, something extraordinary was happening. Humanity was reinventing itself, transforming from a species of individual survival to a collective intelligence capable of facing any challenge. The ship hummed with potential, a living testament to human resilience. The neural integration chamber glowed with a soft, pulsing light that seemed to breathe with its own rhythm. Dr. Aisha Okoy carefully adjusted the quantum entanglement interfaces, her augmented hands moving with impossible precision. Subject is stable, she reported to Captain Elena Rodriguez. Neural mapping at 87% synchronization. The subject was Marcus Chen, chief engineer of the Terran Resolve. But subject was hardly the right word anymore. What lay before them was a living testament to human potential. A being that existed between biological organism and advanced technological system. The modification had begun as a solution to the extreme challenges of deep space survival. Radiation, microgravity, prolonged isolation. These were challenges that traditional human biology could not overcome. Now they were rewriting the very definition of human existence. Marcus's body was no longer purely organic. Nanite networks flowed through his bloodstream, creating a living interface with the ship's systems. His neural pathways had been enhanced, expanded, connected to the ship's quantum computational matrix in ways that blurred the line between human consciousness and artificial intelligence. "How do you feel?" Elena asked, her voice a mixture of scientific curiosity and personal concern. The response came not just through sound, but through a complex neural transmission that filled the room with a multidimensional understanding. Marcus was experiencing the ship, the space around them, the quantum potentialities of their existence, all simultaneously. "I can feel the quantum probability waves," he communicated. "I can see the potential paths of our journey, the multiple realities that exist in each moment." Dr. Ramon Santos monitored the biological systems. The human body was being fundamentally reimagined. Enhanced cellular regeneration, radiation resistance, the ability to enter controlled hibernation states, these were no longer science fiction, but necessary adaptations. Nearby, the 2 rescued children, Zara and Michael, underwent their own, more subtle modifications. Their neural plasticity made them ideal candidates for the next stage of human evolution. Their augmentations were designed to be less invasive, more integrated, allowing their natural human creativity to expand rather than be replaced. "We're not creating super soldiers. Aisha explained to Elena during a private moment. We're creating survivors. Adaptable, creative, resilient. The ethical implications were profound. They were making choices that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of human evolution. Each modification was a careful balance between enhancement and preservation of human essence. Kira Chen worked on the ship's adaptive interface, creating systems that could learn and grow alongside their human operators. The line between ship and crew had become almost meaningless. They were becoming a single adaptive organism capable of surviving in the most extreme conditions. A warning system activated. A potential Centauri tracking signature detected at the edge of their quantum sensor range. But this was different from their previous encounters. Marcus, or the being that had been Marcus, processed the information in milliseconds, calculating millions of potential response scenarios. We have options. The neural transmission came. Not just words, but a complete strategic analysis that encompassed quantum probabilistic outcomes. Belina watched in awe. They were no longer just fighting to survive. They were becoming something entirely new. A species that could adapt, that could transform, that could face the unknown with a flexibility that traditional life forms could never comprehend. Outside the ship, the universe waited, vast, dangerous, full of potential. Inside the Terran Resolve, humanity was being reborn. The holographic star map pulsed with intricate lines of quantum probability, each thread representing a potential path of intervention. Captain Elena Rodriguez studied the display with a predator's intensity, her augmented neural systems processing information at speeds that would have been impossible mere months ago. We're not just fighting, she muttered to herself. We're rewriting the rules of galactic existence. The Terran Resolve had become more than a ship. It was a catalyst, a weapon of mass disruption that challenged every established principle of interstellar conflict. Their recent missions had exposed critical vulnerabilities in the Centauri Collective's seemingly impenetrable power structure. Lieutenant Kira Chen manipulated the quantum communication arrays, establishing contact with a network of resistance groups they had discovered during their journey. These were not just human survivors, but a diverse coalition of species that had been subjugated by the Centauri. Incoming transmission from the Zeraxian resistance, Kira announced. The holographic display shifted, revealing a being that was part organic, part crystalline structure. A species that had been fighting the Centauri for generations. The human ship approaches. The Zeraxian leader communicated, their form shifting with each word. Your methods are unpredictable. It was the highest compliment such a species could give. Dr. Aisha Okoy had been working on something revolutionary. Using the neural interface technologies they had developed, she had created a communication protocol that could translate not just language, but intent, emotion, and quantum-level communication signatures. We're building more than an alliance, she explained to Elena. We're creating a new form of interspecies understanding. The ship's modified quantum drive allowed them to appear and disappear at will, striking at the most critical points of the Centauri infrastructure. They were no longer just defending. They were actively dismantling an entire galactic power structure. Marcus Chen, or the entity that had been Marcus, processed strategic possibilities simultaneously. His consciousness had become a living computational matrix, able to calculate millions of potential outcomes in fractional moments. The Centauri communication network is vulnerable, Marcus communicated, not through traditional weakness, but through the very rigidity of their collective intelligence. Their latest mission targeted the Centauri's quantum communication hub, a massive structure that controlled information flow across multiple star systems. Traditional warfare would have meant direct confrontation. The Terran Resolve approach was far more elegant. They didn't destroy the hub. They infiltrated it, introducing quantum uncertainty into its core communication protocols. Information would still flow, but now with subtle variations that would create cascading uncertainty throughout the Centauri command structure. The rescued children, Zara and Michael, played a crucial role. Their enhanced neural plasticity allowed them to assist in developing communication strategies that were fundamentally incomprehensible to the Centauri collective mind. Imagine communication as a living thing, Zora explained to one of the Zaraxian resistance members. Not a fixed message, but a dynamic, evolving process. Dr. Ramon Santos monitored the biological and psychological impact of their interventions. They were learning to fight not just with weapons, but with understanding, breaking down the very foundations of the Centauri's hierarchical system. As the mission progressed, Alina realized they were doing something unprecedented. They were not just resisting. They were teaching the galaxy a new way of existing, a method of interaction based on adaptability, creativity, and fundamental respect for potential. The universe washed. The Centauri trembled. Humanity transformed. The void between star systems crackled with impossible energy. The Terran resolve hung suspended in a quantum state that defied conventional physics, facing the massive Centauri apex, the command ship that represented the pinnacle of the alien civilization's technological might. Captain Alina Rodriguez stood at the center of the bridge, her augmented consciousness interfacing directly with the ship's systems. Around her, the crew had become something more than individual beings, a collective intelligence that moved with perfect synchronization. Final approach, Lieutenant Kira Chen announced, her voice a harmonic blend of human speech and quantum communication protocols. The Centauri Apex was a nightmare of biomechanical engineering, a ship that was part machine, part living organism, capable of consuming entire planetary systems. Its hull rippled with adaptive defense mechanisms that had crushed 1,000 civilizations. But humanity was no longer just fighting. They were rewriting the fundamental laws of existence. Dr. Aisha Okoy had spent months developing their ultimate weapon, not a traditional destructive force, but a quantum communication virus that would fundamentally alter the Centauri collective consciousness. It wasn't about destruction. It was about transformation. Marcus Chen, or the entity that had evolved from Marcus, processed millions of potential engagement scenarios simultaneously. His consciousness had become a living computational matrix that existed across multiple quantum states. "They cannot comprehend our approach," Marcus communicated. The transmission was more than words. It was a multidimensional understanding that filled the bridge with strategic probability. The children, Zara and Michael, played a crucial role. Their enhanced neural plasticity allowed them to create communication patterns that were fundamentally incomprehensible to the Centauri collective mind. They were the key to breaking the alien civilization's rigid information structures. Dr. Ramon Santos monitored the biological interfaces. The crew of the Terran Resolve was no longer purely human. They were a hybrid organism, part biological, part technological, entirely adaptive. As they approached the Centauri apex, reality itself seemed to bend. The ship didn't move through space so much as it existed in multiple potential locations simultaneously. Traditional targeting systems would see them everywhere and nowhere. Quantum infiltration sequence initiated, Kira reported. The attack, when it came, was unlike anything in the history of galactic conflict. They didn't seek to destroy the Centauri apex. They sought to fundamentally alter its consciousness. Quantum communication waves penetrated the ship's defenses, not as an invasion, but as a complex information pattern that challenged the very foundations of the Centauri collective intelligence. It was a virus of possibility, of potential, of understanding. The Centauri apex began to change. Its rigid, hierarchical systems started to break down. Millions of individual consciousnesses, long suppressed by the collective, began to emerge. Alina understood in that moment that they were doing something more than fighting. They were liberating a species from its own psychological constraints. "We're not destroying," she communicated to the crew. "We're giving them a choice." The void between stars erupted with impossible light. Potential realities collapsed and expanded. The Terran Resolve existed at the center of a quantum storm that rewrote the very fabric of galactic existence. Zara looked up at Alina, her eyes reflecting multiple realities. "We're changing everything," she said. And they were. The chamber was silent, save for the subtle quantum resonances that now permeated every surface of the Terran Resolve. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic representation of what remained of human civilization, and what it was becoming. 17 years had passed since their confrontation with the Centauri apex. The galaxy was unrecognizable. Where once stood rigid interstellar hierarchies, now existed a dynamic network of civilizations. The Centauri were no longer a collective threat, but a diverse group of species finding their individual identities. The quantum communication virus had done more than defeat an enemy. It had liberated an entire civilization from its own psychological constraints. Dr. Aisha Okoye approached, her form now a seamless blend of biological and technological systems. The last of the refugee colonies have been integrated, she reported. Her communication was simultaneously verbal and quantum, layers of meaning that transcended traditional language. The children who had been rescued, Zara and Michael, now led diplomatic missions across the galaxy. Their unique neural structures allowed them to communicate with species that traditional diplomacy could never understand. They were bridge builders, translators of possibility. Dr. Raymond Santos had transformed medical science. The adaptive technologies developed during their survival had revolutionized how different species understood healing, consciousness, and biological potential. What was once seen as species-specific limitations were now viewed as opportunities for transformation. The Terran Resolve was no longer just a ship. It was a living archive, a testament to human potential, a mobile civilization that carried the essence of what humanity had become. Its quantum systems contained not just technological knowledge, but the collective experiences, memories, and potential of multiple species. Marcus Chen, or the entity that had evolved from Marcus, served as the primary navigation and strategic intelligence. His consciousness existed across multiple quantum states, able to process and understand complex interstellar dynamics in ways no single intelligence could comprehend. Lieutenant Kira Chen managed the intricate communication networks that now connected diverse civilizations. What had started as a survival mechanism had become a new form of galactic interaction, a web of understanding that valued potential over hierarchy. Elena reflected on their journey. They had not just survived. They had fundamentally reimagined what civilization could be. The rescued Centauri scientists, who had once been their enemies, now worked alongside humans, creating technologies that pushed the boundaries of known physics. The rigid boundaries between species had dissolved, replaced by a shared understanding of potential. "We're not conquerors," Elena often explained to the young generations. "We're architects of possibility." A transmission came through, a diplomatic mission requesting assistance in resolving a complex multi-species conflict. The Terran Resolve would respond, not with traditional diplomatic protocols, but with their unique ability to help species see beyond their immediate perceptions. Zara approached Elena, her eyes reflecting multiple realities. "We're still learning," she said. It was both a statement and a profound philosophical observation. The universe had changed. Humanity had changed. But the core of what made them special remained. The ability to adapt, to understand, to see potential where others saw only limitation. Outside the ship's quantum field, stars pulsed with possibilities. Civilizations communicated in ways never before imagined. And at the center of it all, the Terran Resolve continued its journey, a beacon of hope, a symbol of what could be achieved when a species chose understanding over conflict. Humanity's greatest victory was not in defeating an enemy, but in reimagining what civilization could become.